Hello everyone and welcome to Metagame Mastery, coming to you today with more Dominaria previews and some pretty darn powerful ones at that. Will this set break Commander? That's the big question of the day. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Big time! Go time! Let's go! First up, we're going to take a look at the Gruul archetype is going to be based off of Kicker. For example, we have Baloth Gorger. He's 4 CMC, 2 colorless, green, for a 4/4 beast. He has Kicker, 4 colorless, and if he was kicked, he enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters. So just playing him regular, he's an on-curve 4/4, passes the vanilla test. Very strong as a curve filler in common. But then, if you draw him late game, he still has the potential to be a very sizable body on the board. Very powerful card in limited. And this is a perfect example of how Gruul is going to take advantage of Kicker with cards like Elfheim Druid. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a green for a 0/2 Elf Druid. You could tap it to add 1 green to your mana pool, or you could tap it to add 2 green to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast kick spells. So this makes Kicker a lot more viable because you're going to be able to get those kicked creatures out a lot faster with this type of mana ramp. And one thing we've been seeing is, especially in green, there's a lot of mana ramp. And then on top of that, you've got Skirk Prospector in red, and you're going to be able to crank out big spells very fast, even in limited. And then there's Kicker payoffs, like Halar the Fire Fletcher is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, red-green for a 3/3 legendary elf archer with trample. Whenever you cast a spell, if that spell was kicked, put a +1/+1 counter on Halar, and then he deals damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters to each opponent. Not only does he pass the vanilla test, he's a 3/3, 4/3 with upside. He's got trample on him. But as you grow him, casting spells throughout the rest of the game, he has the ability to get big, trample over other creatures, and throw in some direct damage at no additional cost. This is a great payoff in limited. And there are some pretty awesome Kicker spells, like Untamed Kavu is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a green for a 2/2 Kavu with Vigilance and Trample. He has a Kicker of 3 colorless. If he was kicked, he enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on him. So right off the bat, he's a bear with 2 keywords. That's bear with double upside. And then if you kick him, he still comes in on curve as a 5/5 for 5 with 2 keywords. That's really powerful board state, both early and mid game. And Skizik is being reprinted, this time downshifted to uncommon, which I think is perfect for this card's power level. It's 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a red for a 5/3 elemental with trample and haste. Kicker of 1 red at the beginning of your end step. If it wasn't kicked, sacrifice it. So this is going to play very similar to what we saw Charging Monstrosaur play. Now, if Charging Monstrosaur didn't make an impact in Standard, this won't either. The 4 and 5 drop in red is super crowded right now. There's a lot of really powerful creatures there. But in Limited, this is absolutely worth playing. Pick this up, get some fast damage in, and really shove this threat down your opponent's throats. Garna the Blood Flame is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, black-red for a 3/3 legendary human warrior. She has flash, and when she enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn. Other creatures you control have haste. So the first thing I see when I look at this card is that it's situational, okay? You're going to want to run this in formats where board wipes are common, because you can flash this in after a board wipe is resolved, put all your creatures back into your hand, and then go ahead and play those creatures and attack in with them because they'll have haste that turn without losing any tempo. In that situation, this card can absolutely win you games. The downside being is it's a one-trick pony. Now, there's additional flexibility here. If you want to have, say, just consistent board wipe protection, and you're worried about conserving resources, then have a sack outlet on the board. An Altar of Dementia, a Goblin Bombardment, you take your pick, right? Have a sack outlet on the field, play this card with Flash, and then sacrifice it in response to its ability going on the trigger. It'll go back to your hand so that next time there's a board wipe, next turn cycle, or at any point thereafter, you'll still have this available to protect you and conserve your resources. Warcry Phoenix is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a red for a 2/2 Flying Haste Phoenix. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay 2 colorless and a red. If you do, return Warcry Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. So, Rekindling Phoenix, this is not. This creature, I'd say it's just a little too mana intensive to really make work. But if you're just looking to push through damage in limited, this can do fine for you, just getting that little bit of extra evasive damage in. Outside of that, I don't foresee this seeing any play. Orcish Vandal is 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a red for a 1/1 Orc Warrior. You can tap him and sacrifice an artifact. Orcish Vandal deals 2 damage to any target. So this is actually really cool because it turns all of your artifacts that you may be playing just to get historic triggers, maybe they have an Enter the Battlefield effect that's already resolved, whatever the case may be, turns them into a shock every single turn. That's really versatile. I think this is going to be very good and limited. Perfect example is Blood Tallow Candle is 1 colorless mana for an artifact. You can pay 6, tap it, sack it. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. So it's kind of like a Universal Solvent mixed with a Dismember. Both of those are better cards than this. But this is still important for you to get limited because this will trigger your historic triggers. And there's going to be a lot of them for only 1 colorless mana. This can go in any deck. And for that reason, and that reason alone, this is a solid card for you to pick up in limited. Outside of that, it won't see any play. Skittering Surveyor is 3 colorless mana for a 1/2 artifact creature construct. When it enters the battlefield, you may search a library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So this is really good for your limited decks where you're just looking to splash an additional color, maybe delving into 3 colors, which is fine, especially in sealed. This will do work for you. So in those limited environments, it's absolutely worth taking a look at. Navigator's Compass is 1 colorless mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. You can tap it until end of turn. Target land you control becomes a basic land type of your choice in addition to its other types. So this plays well with the Cabal Stronghold. This allows you to splash a 3rd color, and it's some incidental life gain in addition to your historic effects. But whoa! Look at that flavor text. The Weatherlight can no longer plane shift, but it can traverse Dominaria with ease. What do you mean it can't plane shift? Am I the only one who's getting flashbacks of Firefly being canceled right now? This is crap! Urza's Tome is 2 colorless mana for an artifact. You can pay 3 colorless mana, tap it to draw a card, then discard a card unless you exile a historic card from your graveyard. So this is actually pretty powerful. One-sided, repeatable card draw. You could do this at the end of an opponent's turn, maybe holding up mana for an instant. And if for whatever reason you decide not to use it, they don't play anything for you to counter, for example, just go ahead and loot. And if you have something in your graveyard, you could just get straight card advantage. Either way, this is actually pretty powerful. I like this card a lot. Jarvis Familiar is 4 CMC for a 2/2 artifact creature bird with flying. Historic spells cost you 1 colorless less to cast. So it's kind of mana ramp in historic mana stacks. It's kind of expensive mana ramp. It comes a little bit late for it to really be relevant in basically any format. But if you're really looking for some mana ramp for maybe your mono white commander deck or your white black brawl deck, whatever the case may be. This will at least allow you to get your commander out 1 turn sooner. Maybe if you're looking to cast a 6-drop commander. Howling Golem is 3 CMC for a 2/3 artifact creature golem. Whenever it attacks or blocks, each player draws a card. So this is kind of neat because you have absolute control as to when it triggers. And when you attack with it, it triggers on your turn, allowing you to gain card advantage from it first. Or in a multiplayer format, this can block each opponent's turn, allowing you to get several triggers off of it in a single turn cycle. Is it good enough to play? That really depends. I personally don't like group hug cards. Anything that helps my opponent is detrimental to my game plan. But if it is your style of gameplay, then I think this provides some unique advantages over a traditional Howling Mine. Mishras Self-Replicator is 5 colorless mana for a 2/2 artifact creature assembly worker. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1 colorless mana. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Mishras Self-Replicator. So first off, this is a flavor win. Absolutely love those Mishra reference and assembly workers. From a playability perspective, this is bad. This is bad in Limited. This is bad in Commander. This is just not a good card. You got to pay way too much mana to make this work. Even with mechanized production, this is way too much mana. That's the only card I could see interacting positively with this in Standard right now is mechanized production. And even that's not good enough. SaranTemporal Gateway is 4 colorless mana for a legendary artifact. You can pay 4 colorless mana, tap it, and put a historic permanent from your hand onto the battlefield. That is freaking sweet. It's Quicksilver Amulet, only rather than being just for creatures, this will put out your legendary creatures. This will put out your legendary planeswalkers. This will put out all of your artifacts and even sagas. Now, 4 mana is still a lot. It won't always be profitable, but you can effectively flash them into play with this card. And in doing so, they're being put into play as an ability. Therefore, they cannot be countered. On the downside, they won't trigger anything that happens on the cast of a historic spell. So it doesn't interact with maybe some of your triggered abilities in play. Still, this is awesome advantage. And there are some powerhouse, big freaking creatures you could dump on the board with this early. Very, very good card. Arielle, Knight of Windgrace, is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white-black for a 4/4 legendary human knight with vigilance. You can pay 2 colorless mana and a white and tap her to create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Or you can pay a black, tap her, tap X, untap knights you control, destroy target creature with power X or less. So this is a very, very powerful card in Limited and in Commander. And the reason I say that is right off the bat, it passes the vanilla test. It's 4 mana for a 4/4 with upside. That's solid. On top of that, because it has vigilance, it allows you to attack in and then hold it up as a blocker. And then once all that's done, you can activate her ability at the end of a turn cycle, getting you additional board state. And then those creatures have vigilance, allowing them to attack in, be available as blockers, and then all being able to tap out to her last ability. Very synergistic design, very top-down, and it's going to interact super well with the Knight Tribal sub-theme in Limited right now. This does especially well in Commander, where you have access to a long history of Knights, including Knight Exemplar, giving them all indestructible. I mean, the list goes on. This is very, very powerful in that format. Blackblade Reforged is 2 colorless mana for a legendary artifact equipment with equip cost of 7, or equip legendary creature of 3. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So this card is especially good in limited because first off, equipment is very strong in limited. Just being able to move it around, get that additional advantage to control the board. But on top of that, every single pack in this format will come with a legendary card, meaning this will almost certainly have something to target and attach to in every single deck. That makes this very versatile, very powerful, and can go in basically any limited pool. Very good card for limited. Traxos, the Scourge of Krug, is 4 colorless mana for a 7/7 legendary artifact creature construct. It has trample. It enters the battlefield tapped and does not untap during your untap step. Whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxos. So I mentioned before how the Thran portal does not interact with cast triggers. It would not interact positively with Traxos. That said, all those super cheap artifacts that do nothing interact very well with Traxos, because not only are you getting whatever value they provide, but you're being able to attack in or block with a 7/7 Trampler for only 4 mana. And limited, this is still an absolute bomb card. Very powerful in this format. I think this card's super cool. Quende, Pride of Femerith, is 3 colorless mana and a white for a 2/2 legendary human knight. He has double strike, and creatures you control with first strike have double strike. This guy plays very well with the equipment that grows his power and toughness. And at the same time, he's going to fit right in with Knight Tribal, where many of the knights have first strike, including the black and white 2-drops. So this is going to be an absolute finisher in Knight Tribal Unlimited, an absolute staple in Knight Tribal and Commander. Very cool card. Even Sentry is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/2 Bird Soldier with flying. This card is decent in limited, won't see play anywhere else. It's just not very good outside of that. But if you're looking to fill your curve at the 4 spot, and you're looking to push through some additional damage mid to late game, then having a 3 power flyer is not the worst thing in the world. I'd say this is a C card. It'll do the job for you. It'll do fine. Nothing flashy, though. Pegasus Corsair is 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a white for a 1/3 flying Pegasus. When it attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn. This card, on the other hand, is friggin' sweet. It costs 1 less mana, and it's not going to push through as much damage on its own, but having the ability to jump your biggest threat every single turn is super powerful. There are some big freaking creatures. You can pair this with that 7/7. You can pair this with the Avatar, Famine Incarnate Avatar that we saw the other day. I mean, there are so many juicy targets for this. Even pairing this with a Baloth Gorger that's a 7/7 is pushing through 8 damage in the air. That's really powerful and limited. Keep an eye out for this. This is going to be an absolute powerhouse common. On Saras Wings is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white for a legendary enchant aura. Enchanted creature is legendary, gets +1/+1, has flying, vigilance, and lifelink. So I typically do not like auras, period. I don't want to get 2 for 1, especially for 4 mana. The only reason I would even consider running this card, even though it gives so much value, and there is a lot of value on whatever you attach this to, is if it's a big body that needs evasion to make it work. And there are some in this format. So if you're running those in your limited pool, this is fine. Outside of that, this is no good. you're not going to see play anywhere. Cloud Reader Sphinx is 5 CMC, 4 colorless and a blue for a 3/4 flying Sphinx. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. This is actually really solid common for limited. Just getting a 3/4 flyer that has the additional upside of being able to scry 2 is a great body to put on the board and consistently push through damage. Divination is back. It's 3 CMC, 2 colorless and blue for a sorcery that allows you to draw 2 cards. In the right limited build, this is very powerful. It's not going to see play in any constructed format, but in the right limited build, this will give you the additional gas you need to really close out a game. So you typically don't want to run this or play this on turn 3. You want to play this on turn 6 or 7 when you're getting into the late game, your opponent's running out of cards, and then you're just going to draw into some answers. Weight of Memory is 5 CMC, 3 colorless blue for a sorcery, draw 3 cards. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into the graveyard. So this is a format where Gaia's Blessing is a thing. Mill basically isn't a viable option in limited. But there's also a ton of Graveyards Matter strategies. In green, there's synergies for having creatures and lands in your graveyard. In red and blue, there's synergies with instants and sorceries. And obviously in black, you get to reanimate stuff. Even in white, there are some triggers that allow you to bring back low-cost creatures. All of these things are good for you to target yourself and mill some additional cards into your graveyard to effectively treat them as being in your hand. That makes this card interesting. I don't think it's good enough because it's just too much mana, but from a flavor perspective, it's also very cool. Getting to see Karn, Joyra, and Teferi meet up again at long last. In Bolus's Clutches is 6 CMC, 4 colorless blue for a legendary enchantment aura. Enchant permanents. You control enchanted permanent. Enchanted permanent is legendary. So I know everyone's focusing on the story spotlight. What does this mean for Liliana? What does this mean for Nicol Bolas going forward? But in limited, this is an absolute bomb at uncommon. The ability to not only steal your opponent's most powerful card, but to gain that is super powerful. Imagine targeting your opponent's Planeswalker. Imagine targeting your opponent's best creature. Not only do they lose it, but you gain its power. Or, even better, imagine targeting an opponent's Saga that's about to go off on its ultimate. This is super flexible removal and great advantage in limited. First pickable in most packs. The Mending of Dominaria is 5 CMC, 3 colorless green for an enchantment saga. On the first 2 lore counters, you put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. On the 3rd lore counter, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. Once again, mill is not a viable strategy in this format. Honestly, though, this card, I think, is better for the Explore deck, which really hasn't taken off in Constructed. But I think it plays very well with the Explore mechanic. And I'll tell you why. Because this allows you to be more aggressive, scrying through and putting your non-land cards into your graveyard, and then pulling them back into your hand later when you need them. And then you typically flood your hand with extra lands with the Explore mechanic. And you wind up pitching them because you have too big a hand size. This allows you to pitch them, not worry about it, and then bring them all back into play with a splendid reclamation effect. So I think this plays best with the Explore mechanic in constructed formats. Do I think the Explore mechanic is quite ready to make the jump as a standard powerhouse? No, it's too inconsistent. It's fine in limited, but it's just way too inconsistent. That said, it's a cool card that adds a whole new layer, another dimension to that strategy. Spore Crown Thallid is 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a green for a 2/2 creature fungus. Each other creature you control that's a fungus or sapling gets +1/+1. So it's a bear that's also a lord. This is going to be super sweet in sapling strategies. Coming in at an uncommon, you could probably draft a couple of these in a single draft run and get a ton of value. They're premiering more and more and more sapling generating cards, and this is going to work out great in those strategies, especially if you're looking to go wide and do some crazy stuff with your graveyards. Gaia's Protector is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a green for a 4/2 elemental warrior. Gaia's Protector must be blocked if able. So, you know what I say about 4/2s? I don't like them. They have the power to trade down. And yes, this is potentially has the ability to trade off with one of the multiple 4/4 for 4 in this format. But there's also 5/5s for 4. There's a 7/7 for 4. There's a 4/5 menace that this wouldn't even be able to block on its own for 4. So in that regard, it's very rare that you will be able to trade fairly with this card. I think this card is actually pretty bad and should get pushed down to maybe the bottom of your draft picks. Yargle Glutton of Urborg is 5 CMC, 4 colorless and a black for a 9/3 legendary frog spirit with no abilities. Great flavor text, funny card, but what I really love about this card is if you pair it with anything that grants evasion. This plays super well with that Pegasus. It plays super well with on Saras Wings. This plays super well with anything that grants it trample. This could be an absolute finisher, especially on Saras Wings. Not only being able to push through 10 damage in the air, but get you 10 life gain off the lifelink. Very, very cool card. You have to sort of build around it, but if you do have those evasive options, then this is going to be sweet. Look for really cool combat tricks in the next couple of days as the previews focus more and more on the limited options, because odds are anything you could do to enhance this creature makes this creature good. Kasparov Singer Pureblood is 7 CMC, 5 colorless, black for a 4/4 legendary vampire with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on Kasparov Singer Pureblood. You can pay 4 colors and a red. Kasparov does 2 damage to target creature. So this guy is actually super good in limited. He costs a ton, but if you play a land after the turn you play him, you can shock 2 creatures, getting him 2 +1/+1 counters and having him attack in for 6. That's a lot of value in limited. It's very powerful. And mind you, unlike previous Singer vampires, he doesn't have to deal the damage to them. Any sort of trading combat will actually pump him up. So that's actually pretty powerful. I really like this guy. I like how he interacts with cards like Olivia and Commander, but there are 2 cards that put this guy way over the top, makes him crazy powerful, and potentially is a way for you to run him as a commander in sort of a janky deck. It's Pestilence and Pyrohe Mia, because every time a creature is dealt damage, he gets a +1/+1 counter. These deal 1 damage to every creature, giving him a +1/+1 counter for each creature on the board repeatedly every single turn. And because because he gets a +1/+1 counter each time, you can do this any number of times and he will never die. This allows you to wipe the board and swing through for some really huge commander damage. Kind of a janky combo, but also kind of friggin' sweet. Settle the score is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, black, black for a sorcery, exile target creature. You may put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. So this card is going to be premium removal in limited because it's unconditional exile target creature. Gets past indestructible, gets past any sort of effect that would break any dice triggers or would bring it back from the graveyard. Very powerful. Will not see standard play because this is not Vraska's Contempt. Vraska's Contempt is this, only better in every conceivable way. It's the same casting cost, but it's sorcery speed instead of instant speed. Does not affect your opponent's planeswalkers, and gaining 2 life is more consistently valuable than having a planeswalker you control on the battlefield to add 2 loyalty to. I think this is a fine card overall, though. We'll definitely see play in limited. Whisper Blood Liturgist is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a black for a 2/2 legendary human cleric. You can tap him, sacrifice 2 creatures, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Love this card. Not only is it repeatable reanimation, it's also a sack outlet, and on top of it all, you can activate its ability at instant speed, allowing you to flash in big threats fast. This guy is friggin' sweet. Lich's Mastery is 6 CMC, 3 colorless, black, black, black for a legendary enchantment with hexproof. You cannot lose the game. That's a powerful line of text right there. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lost, exile a permanent you control or a card from your hand or graveyard. When Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. Okay, this thing's going to be a beast in control builds. I'm just going to say that right there. This thing is super powerful. It has hexproof, so it can't be spot removed, and it's an enchantment, which is a permanent type that has notoriously little removal already in decks. So this is going to be really hard to hit. I think this is going to have its biggest potential impact in standard. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely going to be some commander builds that are going to find a way to abuse this, but especially in standard, where you have the ability to put this into play, stall the game potentially indefinitely, and at the same time, use the build around it to use the life gain to really draw almost your entire deck. It actually has some great card interactions with Oketra's Last Mercy is a great example. It only costs 3 mana, and when it resets your life total, that counts as life gain. So however much life it takes for you to get back to 20, you'll draw that many cards for only 3 mana. Now, mind you, your land's don't untap during your next untap step, but you can work around that, and it's very, very powerful. Of course, if this does catch on, you're going to see a lot more Hour of Revelation and River's Rebuke coming out of sideboards, basically becoming an insta-kill condition. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This has been Metagame Mastery. Peace!